Hey, what's up, everybody? The VC here, coming at you with another video about anything and everything. Nothing's off the table, and I always say I'm off the cuff because you just never know what may be flying out of my mouth. I try to, self-censor the best I can, but you know who does it for me? YouTube. YouTube censors me all the time. Just like this video over here, they blocked it because I had NAACP footage in there, and it was blocked. And so, par for the course, right? They block and hold you down. But if you want to watch the full video of this, it is on Rumble. All right, so subscribe to both. That way, if you want to boost my algorithms and my views on YouTube, cool. But it seems like I get more of it on Rumble because I guess it's uncensored and all that good stuff. There's so much more you could go with on Rumble, and I'm starting to like it more and more. It kind of reminds me of there used to be a platform back like in 2020, 2021 called Coco Scoping. Man, Coco Scope was so good. It was such a good alternative and uncensored alternative. You could do anything on there and play music and all that stuff without worrying about copyrights and all those other things. Here, man, they get you anything. All right. But anyhow, the VC here. Just had to let that out for a moment. My whole thing is I'm going to be Gavin focused, Governor Gavin Newsom, because he's such a bitch in this state of California. But before we get to that, there's a couple things I wanted to cover, such as Joy Reid's last show today. I guess it was supposed to be her last show today. I believe that's what it was. As you all know, over the weekend, it was, the news reported, literally everybody reported that Joy Reid was booted from MSNBC because she's just full of shit, full of nonsense, full of shit, and everything has to be racist. It has racial connotations and such that she was just garbage. And yeah, it's just she made it look like the white man's out to get you for everything, and it's like, get out of here, bitch. And that's what literally NBC's doing, is getting her out, that bitch. So let's take a look over here. There's been a war between like Don Lemon, Megyn Kelly, Joy Reid, all this other stuff. So let's see what they got to say here. All right, let's take a look here.
A war has erupted between two heavyweight political commentators in the
Donald's
wake of
garbage
Joy
too.
Reid's shock firing from MSNBC after the network suffered a string of ratings disasters and money woes.
My show had value, and
Fake tears, crocodile tears.
I'm sorry.
Get the fuck out of here, bitch.
That what I was doing
Cry me a river
had
now.
value, and in the end, I'm sorry. I try not to cry on TV, and I say this is kind of like me on TV.
Yeah,
so I
get the fuck
apologize.
out of here.
But not
Straight
everyone
garbage.
was
Fuck you,
devastated.
bitch.
Outspoken commentator Megyn Kelly had no sympathy for Reid.
I got
The
no.
big news tonight will be Joy
Everybody
Reid's
has no-
final show on MSNBC.
Everybody has zero sympathy for Joy Reid because she was straight garbage, all right? And it took a few years for MSNBC to realize it, but low ratings, no advertisers, that would tell you something, right? Like the other, when I talked about this yesterday, when it was announced, I talked about how it's like a store, right? They have all these stores that close in San Francisco, Safeways and all that, Walgreens, because of theft, right? So they close because they're losing money. Money's walking out the door every day in the form of theft. And you expect the business to stay open because of theft? Because if you close, people cry that it's going to be a food desert and that, oh man, they got to, go a mile up the road for the other store and all that. It's too far away. And blah, 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 blah. All this cry shit, right? But a business is a business, and they can't stay in business if you're losing money. Well, there you go. That's why they got to close. Same thing with MSNBC. A business is a business, all right, in the end. If they're not making money because no one's watching the damn show, they're going to cancel you. The same thing. It doesn't matter what skin color you are, all right? She could blame it as racial and, oh, you're racist for firing me because I'm black and all this other bullshit. That shit goes out the door, all right? Because if you're not helping them make any money, you're just a waste of space and a waste of hot air. Plus, Joy Reid's garbage anyway, so get the fuck out of here, bitch.
See, single tear, white woman tears happening right here, Joy. She was officially fired over the weekend
All that
because
talk.
she's a racist, horrible news anchor with
Exactly.
no ratings. And that's really
Exactly.
been the truth for a long time. MSNBC's under new management, and I guess they decided to come to grips with reality. The truth is, this is very sad news for us, as she's provided so much material over the years. I feel the way I felt when Brian Stelter got fired, but he came back, and you never know. I'm sure Joy Reid will wind up doing something where we will continue to get.
She'll be in podcast purgatory, right? Where no one's going to give a damn about what she has to say. Kind of like Don Lemon, right? Just kind of faded into oblivion. Joy Reid's going to be the same thing. Yeah, so go in that corner and get the fuck out.
Get to respond to her absolutely insane POV.
This sparked a war of words online, with former CNN host Don Lemon blasting Kelly's response.
Let me just say to Megyn Kelly, in my 30-some years as a journalist and my 50-some years as a person of color, go f*** yourself. Okay?
Fuck you too. Don Lemon, you're garbage too.
And Lemon didn't stop there, showing his support for Reid by hosting a bizarre watch party live on YouTube for Reid's final show.
Hi, everyone. We're preparing at my house and on the Don Lemon Show for a Joy Reid watch party. So we will see you at 7 Eastern on the Don Lemon Show on YouTube to watch
Fuck
the
outta here,
farewell
man.
for Joy Reid on MSNBC. We'll see you then.
Joy Reid's colleague and rumoured replacement Jen Psaki also sang her praises with a lengthy tribute.
I know Joy just ended her show by thanking her team, which is the most authentically Joy thing to do, I can tell you, and they are also a very incredible team. But I want to start this show tonight by thanking her. I want to thank her because she's done amazing work here. She does tell stories no one tells. She does that fearlessly on her show.
But it wasn't only Megyn Kelly rejoicing.
She does
at the news
amazing
of
work,
Reid's
they would keep her.
departure. Commentator Rob Smith said Joy Reid's show was trash.
Joy Reid, your show had no value. It was trash. It was
There you go.
propaganda, and it was one of the most damaging things to the unity of America that I have ever seen. There was not one single scam over the past 5 to 7 years that you have not foisted on the American public. You foisted the BLM scam on the American public. You foisted the Russian collusion delusion on the American public.
Turns out that the Russian collusion delusion was not a delusion because it was real, but it was on Hunter Biden, right? He had Russian collusion. So it's funny how Democrats always try to deflect and say that, oh, it's so-and-so, but it's really them, So facts right here from Rob Smith.
Foisted the January 6th basically lie and propaganda on the American public. You pushed the COVID propaganda on the American public. And so now that you have outlived your usefulness as an effective propaganda tool for the corporate masters that you serve, they have gotten rid of you, which is what happens. I hope that you're happy and feel good about yourself for basically denigrating Black Republicans, for crapping all over Black Republicans like Byron Donalds, Black Republicans like Tim Scott, Black Republicans like me. Black Republicans, you did nothing but smear, denigrate, and bully all of us because we did not fall in line with that agenda. So your tears are delicious. I care nothing about these tears because you are a liar, you are a racist, and you are a propagandist, and I'm glad your show is gone.
Man, all
And
facts.
perhaps the happiest person with the news was Donald Trump. The president applauded the sacking, particularly as he was a victim of Joy Reid's sprays countless times. He wrote on Truth Social, "Lowlife chairman of Comcast, Brian Roberts, the owner of ratings challenge NBC and MSDNC, has finally gotten the nerve up to fire one of the least talented people in television, the mentally obnoxious, racist Joy Reid. Based on her ratings, which were virtually non-existent, she should have been canned long ago, along with everyone else who works there. And it seems like Joy Reid isn't going anywhere if her final sign-off is anything to go by. She will be following Don Lemon's footsteps out of the mainstream media, plugging her Blue Sky and Substack platforms.
Shout out to our amazing readers, our audience. I just love running into y'all in the airport, on these streets, and on social media. I could not love or appreciate you more.
Fuck outta here.
Thank you for holding us down. Almost 5 years. We are a toddler, and we out in these streets, in this world, and we are not going to stop. That is tonight's readout. You can follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, and on Substack at substack.joy. It's at joyandread.substack.com. Also on TikTok and Facebook at Joy Reid Official. Inside with Jen Psaki starts now.
Bye. Bye, Felicia. All right.
It's not a...
Bye, Felicia. Yeah, get the fuck out of here. So, yeah, so it's good to see with that. All right. So, War of Words there. Yeah. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, bitch. So, that's what she gets, man, for all the tomfoolery all these years. And I just wanted to point out to that. And then, let me see here. Did I miss anything else before we get to what I wanted to talk about? Yeah, I guess we'll get to it over here. Let me see here. There it is. So, that fool, this moron here named Gavin Newsom, alright, he wants to, beg Trump once again. He's going to bend the knee to Trump once again, just like he, met him at the tarmac at the airport when Trump arrived to California to go see the wildfire sites.
Super Bowl.
So, funny, right, that
$8
how that
million.
is. And, Gavin Newsom's a two-faced piece of shit. So after that meeting with Trump at the tarmac, he, ends up going back to Sacramento and, try to Trump-proof the state, pull $50 million out of nowhere, and half of that to protect the legislative, members. If they get sued or whatever, or they got to do something, they're protected with that money, which is kind of like a slush fund. And then the other $50 million is to protect the illegals if anything happens to them. And so it's like, it makes you wonder, like, where do you get $50 million from, because we're already in a deficit, budget-wise, and you spend all this money frivolously, right, to the homeless, $24 billion that we don't know where it went. You already spent all this money on the train to nowhere, where not one track's been laid, right? Let's see, what else is there? You got the wildfire disaster. You got water diverted to the ocean. We have high cost of living due to this Green New Deal bullshit where, we got to rely on everything outside and we can't do nothing on the inside of California. His dumbass raised fast food minimum wage, and so what do you think is going to happen? It raised fast food prices, right? And I mean, it goes on and on about all the moronic bullshit. He wants to close prisons, and so he releases prisoners out in the streets, and they commit more crime, and didn't really solve nothing. I mean, it goes on and on and on, and maybe this is the tipping point with the LA wildfire disaster as it burned up, the elites, neighborhoods, and all that all over LA. And so, when it comes to reconstruction and rebuilding and all that stuff, we don't have a budget for it because Gavin Newsom has overspent. And now, where is he going to get this money from? Well, he has to beg Mr. Trump for it. And so here he is begging for Trump. I need $40 billion. How about this? Don't put money towards illegals. That's easily, I think they were saying, just the health care cost alone on illegals raises Medi-Cal cost to around $10 billion. Oh, if you remove that, there you go. Right? If you remove funding towards a train to nowhere, if there's no assistance but you're funding it, That'll help. If you don't put any more money towards the homeless program, is obviously you don't know where that went originally, so don't do that either. Stop spending money on illegals with everything else, because when you look at what California is doing for illegals, right? They're funding everything for them, right? We talked about Medi-Cal, which is the healthcare insurance. So they're funding their homes, they're funding their food, they're funding their living expenses, housing, all that stuff. And for what, right? We're into some deep shit, and then all this Green New Deal bullshit that we can't do nothing, all these restrictions that we got to live by, and talk about socialism. Shit, we are living in a socialist state because they are, controlling everything, and they're squeezing everything out of us because they love to raise and make us pay for it when they're out of money, right? All they do is spend, and then when they run out, they come to us to pay for more and raise taxes and all that stuff. And so let's see what this has been reported here. Let me turn up the volume here.
To Live and Out from Fox, I'm Eddie Mack. As we're just listening into that Fox 11 segment, the issue is just days before L.A. Mayor Karen Bass decided to fire L.A. Fire Chief Kristen Crowley. That potentially got the ball rolling a little bit. And this weekend, we're also hearing a statement coming in from Crowley. I want to read it out to you in full about this, saying, as a humble public servant for the past 30 years, 25 of those with the LAFD, it has been an absolute honor to represent and lead the men and women of one of the greatest fire departments in the world. As the fire chief, I base my actions and decisions on taking care of our firefighters so that they could take care of our communities, serving others before self, having the courage and integrity to do what is right, and leading compassion, love, and respect that guided me throughout my career.
Protect Crowley on her behalf and try to get her job back.
LAFD members,
fuck that mayor
and civilians.
Karen Bass, she's garbage.
After the dismissal, the removal there of Kristen Crowley, I do want to bring into the conversation right now LA Times reporter Julia Wick. Julia, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. You were at the press conference, lots of fireworks there, lots of questions about what led to this decision. What's the biggest takeaway from this decision?
She said nothing. I covered this press conference a couple of days ago. Like, Karen Bass really said nothing to justify the firing. That she wasn't contacted ahead of time. She wasn't on the information loop on what was happening, and she didn't really say anything to justify the firing of Crowley. She was just looking for a scapegoat, straight up.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me on. So I would say it's kind of twofold. There's the two answers Bass gave on Friday when she removed Crowley. One of those answers is that she basically, our paper reported shortly after the fires that Crowley could have held about 1,000 firefighters over at the end of their shift on the Tuesday morning the fires started. So there would have been about 1,000 more firefighters working at that time. Now, this was reported at least a month ago, so that's not new. The other reason Bass gave is she says that Crowley said she would not take part in an after-action report, and we have not heard from
the largest wildfire disaster in the history of California. I would think, right? Like an after-action report, you're telling me it can be prepared within a couple weeks after this thing has been done? I mean, I would think it would take several weeks to months before they could have this after-action report that supposedly Karen Bass fired over for not getting from Crowley.
From Crowley yet about what exactly happened with that report. It's standard practice to do that kind of report after an incident like this.
And I want to ask you about that after-action report because Mayor Bass was talking about several investigations, both internal and external, into some of the decision-making around this deadly fire with the Pacific Palisades. What entails an after-action report, and is there anything else the LA Times is gleaning?
Sounds like Sounds like you need some
there will probably
investigation.
and this is, going to
needs to be done.
when all is said and done, probably the most expensive natural disaster in the U.S. In U.S. history. There is going to be a lot of after action reports. This specifically is, she was asking the fire commission chief, which is the body that oversees the fire department, had asked the LAFD to do their own. There will also be one led by the governor's office, and then the fire commission will also be bringing an independent assessor to do one. So there will be a glut of after action reports, no shortage. And these are things that will, in kind of emergency management terminology, this incident is still kind of ongoing. Like, we're still in the beginning of this long tail. Some of these reports, won't be done for years.
Yeah, the story.
Yeah, so if she just said it, if some of this stuff won't be done for years, so how can it be done quickly from the fire chief? So that's bullshit.
Is just getting started in terms of this. I also want to ask you, because it was a tense press conference, a lot of criticism of Bass herself because she was overseas during the time, saying she really didn't get a call warning her about all of these potential warnings with the high winds and different things, the kind of drought in the region. How much does she need to take accountability? How much are people pushing her? And how fair is some criticism of her for not being in the state for some of these things that happened?
All of it. That's an easy answer.
More options. Grainger has over
all the above.
box types in stock and ready to help you.
You're a leader. You're supposed to take accountability.
Okay, I'm going to break that up.
You're a leader. You're supposed to take accountability. You're not supposed to go anywhere in the first place. Not during fire season, especially. Maybe if it's off season or something. Maybe. She needs to take full accountability because basically the budget was cut originally too, by the way. Don't forget that. So there's a lot more to it than meets the eye, and she needs to take full accountability, which Democrats never do.
Up into a couple.
By the way, I would bang Julia Wicks. She's not bad looking.
Couple of parts. So the first thing is that Bass was on a diplomatic trip to Ghana when the fires broke out. Now, you can't blame someone for being gone when a fire starts, because who could have known it would be the largest fire, we'd ever seen. But what you really can blame her for is the fact that we've been having worse and worse weather warnings in the days leading up to the fire, and specifically.
Yeah, so if there was warnings before, she shouldn't have left. Plus, a diplomatic trip to Ghana and lying about it, saying, oh, because the White House called me to do it. No, I don't believe that. I don't believe the White House, Biden's White House, called for Karen Bass to be a representation of the U.S. to go to Ghana. I don't believe it. I don't believe it at all.
Really, really serious wind alerts. So with those kind of alerts, it means that if a fire starts, it's going to be out of control. And so when Bass came back to the country, she was immediately kind of on her back foot because of this, and because there was so much kind of people were really, really upset she wasn't here when the fires broke out. Now, in terms of what she said to your colleague, Alex Michelson, and then to the Times as well last week or leading up to Friday, was she criticized Crowley very harshly for not calling and warning her about these weather conditions. And that to me is a bit bizarre, frankly, because, I'm not the mayor of Los Angeles, but I follow the National Weather Service on Twitter, and I was...
what's his name? Caruso, who ran against Bass in the 2022 mayoral election, went off of those alerts, hired private firefighters to protect his home and business. All right, as his wildfire started to prop up. And guess what? Caruso's establishments didn't burn down. And he went off of these alerts that were happening.
Very aware of these wind conditions. I think that's kind of how it's felt. That criticism is felt to a lot of people in LA. I'm an LA Times reporter, so I'm following these things closely. But my random neighbor was aware of these very critical wind alerts. So I think that it's been kind of an odd tack that she's taken in that respect.
Yeah, an odd strategy to say the least. And like you mentioned it, that she said her phone was always there. If Crowley needed to call her, she would be able to answer. But also, you know the weather alerts, you know what's coming. You don't know the fire is coming, but you know there's some severe weather in that one. I also want to ask you, because Fox 11 is somewhat at the center of a lot of these different things, with the interview on Monday, but also with Gigi Grassi at Fox 11 talking to Crowley about the lack of funds perceived by her of this. And although Bass said that didn't weigh on this decision, what do we make of this? And do you think this was at least a part of the factor that there was some contentious moments about funding between the mayor and the LAFD?
Yeah, and so the thing you're referring to, for people who have not followed so closely, is that the week of the fire, so when the city was very much not out of the woods, still in really bad crisis, Crowley went on TV and, in what was kind of staggering, really criticized the city, criticized the mayor over fire department funding. And you just don't see people doing stuff like that normally. It really kind of, my understanding is that, the mayor was not happy with it. And there was a lot of talk that week about whether or not Crowley was going to be fired. And she was not removed then. Bass said she was going to wait until kind of things were over before she made any changes. But I think you I would be shocked if that didn't. I don't know for a fact that played into anything, but I would be shocked if that did not upset the mayor. Also, because the chief is, so this fire chief had been appointed by Eric Garcetti, the former mayor, but the fire chief essentially reports to the mayor. This is someone who is working for your city department. I mean, you just don't go on TV and criticize like that typically and keep your job long term.
Yeah, no, that is very good. And of course, they had to get out of that crisis kind of area before she did make a decision. And ultimately,
I think when you really think about it in hindsight, Crowley really cares. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, that really cares that she felt helpless because you got no water in the reservoir, no water in the fire hydrants. You got, less than, what you need for equipment. You're so limited and helpless and can't do nothing about it. You feel so bad that you can't do nothing and just watch it burn down. And all you can do is just move people out and save lives, but you can't save homes, you know what I mean? And so I think it was a genuine response that she was frustrated and put it out there. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't throw your boss under the bus like that publicly, but at the same time, she was frustrated because she felt helpless and couldn't do nothing about it, and so that's what happened.
She made that decision, Bass did, on Friday. I do want to ask you, because she talked about it to Gigi Grassi, saying bluntly, yes, they aren't having enough funds for the LAFD. Bass pushed back on that, saying she has raised the amount of money for the LAFD in her past two budgets. Which one is...
No, I think she's going to raise it now, but not in the past. It was obvious it was cut from the budget. I think it was talked about before.
True, in your eyes?
So this is one of those things where the answer is actually pretty complicated, which isn't, I realize, not that fun of an answer to give. Basically, how it works in the city of LA is the mayor writes the budget, the council approves it. When the council approved the mayor's budget last year, the budget for the fire department was lower than it had been. And this is because they were in the middle of negotiating raises for firefighters. So when that was added in, all told, LAFD's operating budget actually grew, I want to say, by about 7% compared to the fiscal year prior. Now, they still did not by any means get everything they wanted. And LA is in a bit of a fiscal crisis. So a lot of departments all over the place are not getting what they want. But I don't think you can clearly say the budget was cut.
All right, that is very fair. I just wanted to kind of get your take, because those are two very different stances on the funding was cut and the funding obviously grew.
I don't know. That sounds odd to me.
I also want to ask you, because we're also hearing something today from our California governor, I should say, Gavin Newsom, about funding there, saying he has requested from Congress $40 billion to rebuild LA after the wildfire. And this damages there for recovery, for debris removal, stuff like that. What do we make of this? And obviously, how likely is this to get through with everything going on in Washington, D.C.?
I wouldn't give nothing.
The first thing to know here,
I would be like, hey, Gavin, you better go look at your budget and start cutting some shit, especially to the illegals. All right, if you want to, and maybe we might kick in something if you start cutting back on illegal stuff, for the illegals. If you cut back on that stuff, show a little bit of responsibility on that budget. Maybe we might kick in some money into that pot to help you with that $40 billion effort.
These fires. I've been with Bass talking about the Palisades fire. There was also the Eaton fire, which was outside of the city of LA, are just massively, horrifically expensive. I believe the estimates have now swelled to about more than $250 billion. So this extra funding will only be a small part of that. Newsom sent a letter to House leadership that kind of outlined what he wanted that funding to rebuild homes, infrastructure, businesses, schools, churches, healthcare facilities, also supporting residents, helping people get back to work. Whether or not he gets that, I think, is a really complicated question. One kind of fight that's playing out now is whether quote unquote conditions will be put on federal aid to California, which is the Trump administration has said, or some Republicans have said, suggested linking aid to certain policy changes, including voter IDs, some water policy changes. Rick Grenell recently said he'd like to see the California Coastal Commission abolished as part of these funding. So we'll see how any of this actually plays out. I think.
These are great concessions, man. Get rid of the Coastal Commission and voter ID. I mean, these are easy answers and easy actions to take in order to get a little help here. I would do that in a heartbeat. I mean, this is no-brainer stuff.
It's anyone's guess.
Yeah, that is very true. And it's just a drop in the bucket, like you said, for all the damages and all the money that will need to go in to rebuild that. All right, before I let you go, Julia, I just want to ask you, because the news cycle moves so very fast in terms of what's going on in L.A. with both the Eaton fire, the Pacific Palisades fire. What comes next? What are you kind of reporting on in the near future about this?
A great question. Thank you. I think the recovery effort is going to be massively complicated and massively interesting.
You know why complicated? Because even though Newsom says he's going to roll back on the regulation stuff and permitting and all that, the cities aren't. And he needs to force his hand into the cities in order to do that, or it's just going to be a slow effort to get cleaned up and to rebuild. And at the same time, you got all these builders coming in saying, hey, I'll buy that land off of you. Sneaking in, trying to say, I'll buy that land off of you, Don't worry about the cleanup. I'll buy it off of you, straight up. Just, take the offer. You got a lot of these people coming in doing that.
I think what happens next with Mayor Bass politically is also really interesting, whether she can kind of regain her political footing. She's up for re-election next year. Right now, there are no serious contenders running against her. One of the big questions is whether Rick Caruso, who she beat in 2022, who is a billionaire developer who has been pretty loudly criticizing her since the fires, whether he gets into the race. He's also kind of said to be considering running for governor, so we'll see. And then the governor's race as well next year is kind of the other thing I'm following.
Yeah, a lot to get into. And of course, Karen Bass,
All right, let me jump over to this here. Let's see what they got to say over here.
Free cookie for life.
This is why I can't.
Yeah, fascinating stuff here. Let's take a look.
Now you want help. California Governor Gavin Newsom begging Congress for $40 billion to tackle wildfire relief. The governor somehow found $50 million under Sacramento's couch cushions 2 weeks ago to fund his vendetta against President Trump's agenda. Let's not forget, California is spending $9.5 billion extra and counting on health care for illegal migrants.
Imagine, that's $10 billion right there.
That's only been in place fully for 1 year. Get your priorities straight, James.
Yeah. And that's $10 billion right there towards that 40.
I predicted this and said they should not get 1 red cent out of the federal government, because a lot of this will be funneled, because money is fungible, into helping with the insurance crisis, which was born and bred in that state starting in the 80s.
Yeah.
It is nobody's fault but their own. And I guarantee you that's where a lot of that money will go.
And just to remind people, this effort to Trump-proof California, Governor Gavin Newsom asking the legislature for money, scheduling this special session that was scheduled before President Trump took office. So it was a political exercise saying, I want a bunch of money for grievances to be named later. We're sure he'll do something to anger us, so let's appropriate the money. This oil story, having chased all the oil companies out of California, they're now saying maybe we ought to operate our own refinery. On this network, a Chevron executive last year explained in detail how California had made it so difficult to do business, so inhospitable to businesses of all kinds, by the way, but especially to the petroleum industry. Obviously, all California needs to do, if they're concerned about the cost, is clear the regulatory path. You'd have a partner in the Trump administration.
Get rid of this Green New Deal bullshit. Get rid of all this regulatory stuff he just mentioned. And get rid of all these different commissions and all this other bullshit, bureaucracy. And man, you know how fast California could recover? And Gavin Newsom would look like a hero, but he wouldn't do that. That's not Gavin Newsom's way of things. He's just a moron.
We could get the first major oil refinery built in America since the 1970s in California. But I'm guessing that's not the option they're going to choose.
Well, I think that people who run California want to put fossil fuels out of business. The best way to do that is for that state to take over producing the fossil fuels, because they will surely fail in that process and put it out of business. Taylor, your state is struggling here, and Governor Newsom wants money. The problem is, in California, even if Newsom says, you know, I'm going to roll back some regulations for rebuilding, none of the people at the local level do it.
Yeah.
So you end up with the same problem of you can't. So like the problem is you've got layers. It's like an archaeological dig. You've got layers of bureaucracy before you're ever going to find
it. That 250 to 275 billion you lost from the wildfires. How are you going to fix that? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man, you're going to have to cut all that trans and DEI and illegals. That's a good start right there. Just cut back on all these social programs, right? And go with the basics, bare basics. Cut all the regulatory stuff, the bureaucracy, and make it like easy to live in California again. People will come back. The economy will rise, and man, we'll be back again and recover from this. But again, not with Gavin Newsom there. He's not going to do it. You got to wait till after him to actually get, in front of everything again.
Treasure that you're looking for. I mean, do you think in some of these cities where, like in L.A., Mayor Bass fired the police chief? Can something change? If something doesn't change there, it doesn't matter what government.
I'm not sure people trust her any more than they trust Newsom at this point. Brian, you bring up a good point in terms of the rebuilding for the wildfire efforts. Newsom came out with what looks great on paper, rolling back all of our regulatory efforts. But Brian, to your point, the local LA has stricter local rules, right? And so home builders who are coming in to rebuild after the Palisades fire are calling this a non-starter. Mauricio Umansky, we know him, the big developer from the agency. Jason Oppenheim of the Oppenheim Group. They're all doing big developing and big real estate deals down in L.A. They said, honestly, the clearing out process at this point is 18 months. Rebuilding could be 4 to 6 years. It could be 8 years. I mean, imagine in Palisades a little bit more of a middle income community relative to
well, maybe relative to other California, I don't know. It's pretty.
It is, but I mean, those people are totally going to be left behind unless they vote to change the local laws. Builders aren't going to come in and do that.
Why do you need permitting at all if someone only wants to exactly replicate what was already there?
I know.
Why should there be a process? And it's
California. They love that shit.
At the state level, you've had this series of issues where the governor has to keep sending executive orders to the California Coastal Commission to say, no, I really mean it. You really need to let people rebuild.
but it was okay until this happened. And
Yeah.
Palisades, I had family who live there, and you have people who earn $1 million a year, and they can only afford to rent an apartment in Palisades. That's how costly it is. So if my issue is, you have the highest income taxes in the nation in California, and you had the worst insurance regulations. And if people did if people didn't have home insurance, it was their choice. There's no reason. They have an insurer of last resort in California. And if you couldn't get insurance, if your insurer left, you could get it from the state, period. And so the federal taxpayer should not be on the hook for paying for somebody to rebuild because they chose not to get home insurance.
California always makes me think of gridlock because of the traffic, but it's also regulatory gridlock with this mess of like local regulations all the way on up. And it just makes me think about this one email that I got because I'm a correspondent here. I'm always getting pitched for stories, and it's from a group of winemakers in Northern California to illustrate the point. They're being out-regulated until their wineries they're on the brink of closure. So it's a serious issue going all the way from Southern California all the way up to Northern California. This helter-skelter landscape of regulations that are putting business and chasing the energy companies out of the
chasing
state.
The wine out, maybe.
Now they're going to chase the wine out too.
Shit, they're chasing all businesses out. They're chasing all businesses out of all this regulation stuff and, all this crap. You should see the bullshit that some of these businesses got to deal with in order to keep operating their business. But that's a whole different story. I just wanted to bring that up to about how Gavin Newsom is begging Congress for $40 billion now. To do what with it, we don't know. Because that's just only a quarter. Is it a quarter? No, this is more like what they said, like a sliver of what it's going to take to cover the full cost of the full disaster relief of what burned down. So anyhow, comment down below. Let me know what you think. Hey, Gavin's garbage, Joy Reid's garbage, and Karen Bass's garbage. You are out, striking out right there. That's the end of this. And let me know what you think. Subscribe, hit the bell icon. I'm on Rumble. I'm on YouTube. Thank you for your support, and this is On the Daily. I'll see you in the next one.